All right, you're good to go.
Thank you. We will call the Dunn County Facilities Committee meeting to order at 5:01. We're in room 60 of the Dunn County Government Center. And so call of the roll. So we are all present in the room. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. So Supervisor Prochnow moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Supervisor Bjork, seconds. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving what day were they? The previous meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, it's approved unanimously. So our next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have public comment? Did we receive any? Nope. All right, thank you. So number 5, items placed at the request of the chair, there is none. So then we move on to staff and recreation reports. So A is the Fair and Fair Board. Who's going to
Derek, you can come up.
report? Is that,
Sit next to.
yeah, if you want to sit
Yep.
and, all right,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so just turn it to red?
Yep.
Yeah, and so usually we get a fair board report, like
Oh.
what's going on with the fair.
Yep, right now we're looking into the carnival side of things. We're looking at getting a new carnival and getting rid of the Spectrum, who we currently have right now. And then we're also looking into new vendors and music. And right now we're looking into getting Chris Cruzy, who we have a sponsor that is willing to pay for the whole thing on a Thursday night. So, and then our next meeting here on October 6th, we're gonna go over how to make the fair a card use and see if that's a possibility. So there be cash won't be handled. It'll be easier on everybody. And so those are kind of things going forward and yeah,
Would that be entry fees as well? Just a card?
yes,
Okay.
trying that, yep. Yep.
Should be interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Think you'll get pushback?
yeah, it'll be probably a lot of pushback, but I think if you want people to be honest, I think it's something that the board will look into and see what we decide, but
Mhm.
it's one thing that's really on the think about right now.
Do you have any, or is Beata here about the audit? Did you see the audit
Yeah.
from Beata? It's on our agenda, so. Did anyone have questions about the audit summary from Beata?
I got a question about the fair.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Fair Board President. We have a leak in the ship. At Walmart or the fairgrounds on the south side where the people just walk in for free. So if we're gonna audit everybody, having them pay and having maybe a little inconvenience, do you think there's any chance that we can close off the free entrance to the fair?
Yeah.
We can work with the fair board on seeing if we can, we're already renting tents from Briggs. They have some portable gates too. If we can explore options on that, more than a 3-foot snow fence that only ends next to the woods.
Yeah.
So,
Well, few months ago, you know, the discussion was up and, they talked about, putting a fence up. And, this committee member chair, I don't mind, I'm giving her credit for it, says it seems to be kind of odd that you would have a gate that you, to get into, a recreation park. You know, you need to have a gate to close off and not let people into the park. But I'm thinking, you know, we're not talking about a park, we're talking about an activity where people pay to be part of the activity. And it doesn't seem right that we charge some people $5 or $10 or whatever it is for parking, and then other people that enjoying the activity don't have to pay anything. And, you know, the fair's, you know, under tremendous scrutiny on the money that we make or don't make. And all I'm saying is, let's just a portable's fine. And, you know, if you, it's even more disgusting than that, because, early on, when the developer developed that area up there, we were told that a fence was part of his project, you know, and, that never happened. And then it was sold and, you know, maybe that just is our fourth entrance. I mean, if you have, credit cards, you know, it's pretty easy to station a person at that spot and say, well, just swipe here and have a good time,
Mhm.
you know, and make it, you know, swipe here and have a good time. Go nuts, you know, and we're glad you're here. That just that, we need your support financially. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Beata, would you like to talk about the audit? Thank you.
Good evening, and my apologies for being late. Believe it or not, there's traffic, somewhat of a traffic into town, maybe because everybody's going home, where I'm going to work. Right. Yeah. All right. I just wanted to start by saying that what was the scope of the internal audit and what was the objective of the internal audit. So the scope of that was to look at the purchasing methods at the county fair and how they're being procured. And the other scope focuses on cash collections, how they were receipted, any reconciliations, and how that was deposited, and the overall oversight on that cash transactions at the county fair. But then the objective was to look at the ordinances, including Chapter 7, specific to Section 2, which focuses on purchasing policy. And then, of course, there is the cash policy that was adapted. And then taking those and compare that to what has been observed and what documents were available to then compare what did happen versus to what should have happened based on the policy and the ordinance. And also to identify, are there any gaps? Are there any gaps in the, excuse me, in the policies and in the ordinances? And then also include some recommendations that might come with it. So any questions before I dive in? So in an internal audit, I thought it was of value to kind of give you some backdrop on the history. How did the fair was formed and combined with the county overall? And this is where we come in. Also kind of provided a little bit of a summary as to what had taken place. So some of the main findings that came to surface, there were 3 that I identified in a procurement area. So of course, we have a policy and ordinance to say who's the purchasing agent. So in this case, ordinance identifies the county manager being the agent. However, Dan can delegate that. So we have a finance staff that does the purchasing for the whole county. Let me revise that. Policy, excuse me, purchasing, we have designated staff, but mainly deals with like the highway big ticket items that need to go for bids and all of that. We're actually in the process of forming more of a centralized procurement function within finance. So with that said, the ordinance, now that Dan has delegated that, calls for the purchasing authority and how those should be handled. So the policy says that it needs to go through a process which then reviews what needs to be purchased. Does it need a bid? Does it need quotes? And so on. So the county superintendent in this particular case has that face-to-face contact, and that is then a person makes arrangements directly with those vendors, which doesn't really come through the purchasing agent for any of those high ticket items. As some vendors also agreements, my understanding was through questions with the county fair superintendent that they were verbal, they were handled really without going through that standard way of purchasing or binding the county using a contract method. There were a lot of cases, no supporting documentations either. In a lot of cases, the invoices were just routed directly to facilities, and then finance would then pay. But we would also not we would also delay in making those payments simply because we needed some of the supporting documentation. And a lot of times we won't know until the vendor called finance looking for a payment. And that's when we would do a follow-up with the county fair superintendents to ask, is there an invoice and what's that about? So the recommended here is that this, all the purchasing gets routed through the assistant purchasing agent that is in finance. And then that would kind of also require, we would also require that there will be a contract in place that we can use the invoice and validate, yes, this is what we're paying for, and there's a contract for it. So, which kind of goes to the next one is how do we procure with dollar threshold? So our ordinance says that any purchases that are 40 or more require a sealed bid or requires a public notice. Now, anything below that requires written quotes or have multiple proposals. And anything that kind of is less than 5,000, that can be made directly. And of course, if there's any emergency situations, then that also requires a justification, really good notes as to why that took place. So with that in mind, when I looked at some of the documents, including reviewing the financial systems, there were no particular purchases that exceeded that 40,000. However, there were some that were below that. And those that were below that 40, those lacked the consistent documentation, such as quotes. Were there any written quotes or proposals on file? And there was nothing that I could find either. So contracts for entertainment, like vendors or any services, they also did not include any evidence of competitive quotes. So competitive bidding. I didn't identify any emergency purchases in this one, even though there's always going to be that last minute things that need to be fixed at the fair. Also, last item here, the facility department will frequently process payments, but that's after the commitment's been made. As I said earlier, a lot of those invoices will be forwarded to us directly through the fair, and a lot of them will just know if the vendor calls or they email.
Can I ask a
Mhm.
question about the amounts? If you're getting a musician though, would you get bids if they were the one musician you wanted? So how does, just curious if it's like a one,
Sure.
a one person thing and you know you want this musician and do you need bids?
So what I would recommend doing is right before the fair is to advertise on the website or in the local paper, somewhere on the media saying, hey, we are about to have festivities. If you're interested in being one of our vendors, including musicians, please reach out and send us your quotes. That would have met versus, a lot of reaching out directly. It's fine if there's multiple. Let's just say there's only one type of a band. There's only one of them. There is no duplicate, but they might be similar in theme, country music, hot rock, to kind of reached out. And maybe some of them submitted that were, 100 miles radius, and some of them were even further away, and some of them were right around the block. That would be sufficient to then say, yes, I have 3 or 2 that reached out, or I did an outreach, and this is what we got, and this is who we've selected. Mhm. So the third one. So that's again, going back to the ordinance, chapter 7. So in this chapter, it requires that the purchasing staff is the one that's responsible for buying supplies or services or even contractual services to do anything for the Dunn County or any of the Dunn County programs, including county fair. So here, this purchasing person conducts all the procurement activities. So that is in a way of making sure that those purchases are in compliance with our policy, that are in the best interest of the policy and ordinance, and also to the Wisconsin state statutes and the federal requirements. And those really focuses on making sure that there is a fair, effective competition with all the vendors, kind of preserves the integrity of purchasing. And then, of course, there's that consistency. So that too was identified as not followed at high risk, because there were some contractual service, even though they were under that 4,000, those were identified without signed procurement agreements or lack of supporting documentation. So then the other part of that 4,000 was that these agreements were involving county fair board members, which then creates some level of conflict of interest. And with those, that also increases that risk to make sure as to that Chapter 7 and the Wisconsin statutes and the federal requirements that it's fair. The other one, I also found that one invoice was processed through the county finance system, while the other really bypassed the system altogether. So there was one invoice that got paid, and it does not live in our system for payment, nor with the treasurer or bank that it was paid. So it was paid outside of that. And that again, this came up last time and maybe at the county fair, that money was donated by anonymous donor who expressed that they want to be unknown and they would like to make that payment. And we do respect individuals to be anonymous. However, we have to process our payments and the invoices through our system so that we have an official record. So then in 2025, there were 2 contract payments, and those were less than 1,000. And those were also those were for individuals that were serving as the the fair treasurers, but they were also an immediate family of the fair board members. So even though it's okay to hire a family, but it needs to make sure that there is some segregation of duties and there is no conflict of interest. So I looked at those 2 contracts, and those contracts really didn't identify that one could not manage the other. So those were 2 family members that were assigned as the fair treasurers, and they were relatives, and they both had the same authority, so one could not tell the other what to do and vice versa. So that also suggests that there is there's a risk in those controls and segregation of duties. And again, making decisions that's in the best interest of the county.
In that instance, Beata, was there any evidence of malfeasance, or was it just a matter of the fact that one can't technically supervise the other?
The best practice for separation of duties and to tighten that conflict of interest, having 2 relatives. So if you have mother and daughter or son or father, a lot of times is the directive that might be a parent managing a child. So that would be as if me managing one of my
Right.
staff.
But in this, was there any, what I'm asking is, in this case, was there any evidence of,
Favoritism?
well, not really favoritism, but the fact that, they were both handling money? Was the money end of things okay, or were there questions about how the money was handled and
I didn't find any issues, no.
Okay,
Between
that's-
those 2. This just focuses on,
I understand that necessity. Okay.
so then the recommendation for that is to, again, the first one is regardless of the dollar amount, all the transactions need to go through our system, and that includes procurement and supporting documentations. And also the other recommendation is that for all contractual payments, the best practice is to not only go through the financial system, but also ensure that what gets paid, even if it's anonymous, that those donations are treated as any transactions, and those are tracked in the financial system. So we don't want them, again, we understand some people want to be anonymous, but unfortunately, we have to push that through our system. And also the service agreements, and if there are any contracts between those treasurers, it should really clearly define who is the one giving the direction to the other. So any questions in this section before I go to cash?
I just wanted to make a comment about the anonymous payment and the reason why we didn't run it through or that I didn't run it through the county system is because the last time this happened, the county insisted that I turn the name over and they couldn't remain anonymous, so that person walked and we didn't get his donation. And it's not like we were hiding the money. It was a donation made, and then it was for an exact project, and then the money was paid out. And it was ran through the meat animal account.
Right.
So, and that's where that came from, and why that was done that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak to the purchasing agent, and you list the different dollar levels there. But the one that caught my eye is conflict of interest of Fair Board members in the selection of entertainment or vendors or what have you. And what I'm hearing you saying is that this purchasing agent is responsible for that. It would seem to be not serving the public if a musical group that does a Sunday noon program and an afternoon program, and people, that's their reason to come to the fair. And they express their opinions on why I want to come to the fair to Fair Board members. Fair Board members take that to a Fair Board committee meeting and say, the so-and-so group really seems to be popular out there. Don't you think we should have them? Well, if we do that, is that a conflict of interest? And then number two, as far as the food vendors, it's from what I've heard, I'm not a food vendor, food consumer, as good as anybody. And we don't want to have 5 or 6 barbecue guys out there. We want to have a barbecue guy out there. We want to have a pizza guy out there. We want to have some teriyaki. We want to have, a choice. And we've had success with people in the past. And now the decision to have them come back is that of the purchasing agent. And if you want to talk about, and this is just by chance, I went to an annual meeting last night, and the lunch that was served at the annual meeting was products that were left over from the Dunn County Fair, frozen Seiler hot dogs. And I bought 4 packs of 10 for $20, $5 a pack. And where at the fair, they were selling them for $5 a hot dog. And they probably had 30 packs there. They were selling frozen beef product that they buy for their hot piece. So that was a real eye opener to me, is that of all the problems this fair has had in this last year, is that we don't seem to give a consideration to how hard it is on local groups to have the fair be part of their fundraising to run their organization for the year. And for whatever reason, weather, for one, keeps people away, and they end up with 30 packs. That's a lot of hot dogs at $5 a piece. But I know this, and I'm a Fair Board member, and and now I take that information to the Fair Board, and I say the guys up in the corner there that have been here for 30 or 40 years, they really had a hard time of it last year. And, I think that we ought to, make it available to them to come back and provide their product. And if you take away from the Fair Board the knowledge that they have about the vendors or the entertainment or the racetrack and make it a dollars and cents thing, like, what's it, that's what you're trained in. You're trained in dollars and cents. We're making decisions that are more emotional. And we have to meet, I think we have an opportunity to make emotional decisions sometimes on what we do at the fair. So I might be all wrong. I see him sitting down. I'll think he's on the ball. Thank you.
So, yeah, I guess to respond to that, I mean, so I think part of what Bietta is presenting is Dunn County ordinance. It is the law of Dunn County and how we manage funds that are handled by the county. So I understand what you're saying and I don't disagree with it, but our law does. And so that's part of those controls. There are exceptions to this, but I think that's one of those. You speak of a meat processor, right? And that was the meat that was done, and somebody picked that provider to be the one that was there. How come you didn't pick another provider that was in Dunn County? Why does this company get picked over this company? And when we have public funds that are a part of that, that's illegal. And so that's really why we have to do that, and we have to follow those rules. And trust me, we buy a lot within the county. I don't know that anybody really enjoys our rules when we're doing them, but we do have to follow those, and they don't always align with an organization like the fair going through that. As if it was a private organization, you have a lot more control to be able to do to work on emotion.
Okay. May I respond? It wasn't long ago, the facilities committee or facilities needed lawnmowers. They wanted John Deere lawnmowers because they've always worked with John Deere lawnmowers. Member of the county board says, hey, how about me, my company? I'm not a salesman there, but why do you have to buy John Deere lawnmowers? And they bought John Deere lawnmowers, and as far as I know, they never looked at orange lawnmowers. So,
They did.
So
what now?
We literally bought Kubota lawnmowers
Oh, well, good. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
over a price difference of a couple $100.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
And if I could add, we completely understand that we might be limited vendors because we are in a rural area and we have local businesses, and maybe there's just one butcher and maybe there's one person that does yummy, delicious barbecues. But as far as the bids and outreach, it could be as simple as advertising and solicit. Our ordinance says go out there and solicit. If no one responds, then we document that, yes, this is what we did, and nobody responded, maybe one, and we then did an outreach, and this is how it was selected. So it's a matter of be able to document why that vendor was chosen from a public looking in. Like Dan said, would ask the question, well, why did you pick this vendor? There's another local one that also just started their business and they were not given the opportunity. Well, we didn't know you were there. But if we advertise, either that's our website or social media, then it says, oh, here's what we did to advertise. And maybe that person didn't see it and therefore didn't respond. But we did our part. We did as much as we could.
Just moving, for clarification, for just moving forward, when we have like the food vendors out there, we don't hire them. They pay to come to us and provide that service, the same with the commercial exhibitors and the vendors. We have like their application form and then they come and apply. And in most cases, we accept them all. We do limit, like Larry said, our food so we don't duplicate. So this would apply to commercial vendors also that would buy a space in the exhibit hall for $100 or $150, I guess it is right now. So they would also have to go through this purchasing, this new policy or this policy. I mean, the fair, way back in the, when I first got on the fair board, way back in the 2000s or whatever, and I remember having conversations with Gene Smith and Scott Cox about how we operate, and we were given more, a little bit more leeway just because of the nature of our business and that
Sure.
we do this. You know, this type of thing. So, but moving forward, if we have to, is that what you're expecting? Is that all the commercial vendors have to be solicited by the finance person and all the food vendors?
So the purchasing agent works collaboratively with the departments. So they're not solely making that decision. They will be working with you other departments when they're purchasing. Purchasing agent might not know that, hey, these are things coming up on the horizon. They'll do an outreach. The purchasing agent or the assistant purchasing agents, then they will determine, okay, do we need a bid? Do we need a quote? They'll kind of guide you through that process to then say, yep, this, let's get some quotes. They might advise on what would be the next step to do, but it's a collaborative effort. This individual is not going to make those decisions without you knowing or getting anyone's input from the county fair. The other item is there will be guiding to make sure that the contracts are reviewed by our corporation counsel to make sure that our liability and all that is covered. Let's just say we have a contract and God forbid something happened on the ground, they got hurt. Then who is liable for that? And make sure that that contract addresses those items to kind of minimize that liability for the county. So if you have a contractor coming in, maybe insurance might be needed, you know? And so I'm saying is that the purchasing agent or the assistant purchasing agent will work with the fair, and ultimately the fair board will then decide how they're going to run their business.
And so just to clarify, so it's not only people we hire, it's people that are paying us. We have to run through this purchasing agent.
So like your vendors, your
Yes.
food,
Yes.
yeah, there is a contract in place with them.
Yes, that
Oh.
court counsel drafted for me
Okay.
several years ago.
Yep, so it's a matter of collaboratively work with the purchasing person to make sure that we make a full circle as far as the liability, is everything in check, so that they can proceed and provide the service to us.
Yeah, and just as a side note, we
Yeah.
do get insurance documentation from them, so.
Yep, you know, if it's a food, then maybe there needs to be license, or I'm sure.
Yep, we have all
Right.
that.
Yep.
And the other piece is like when we are, like well, I already have some judges hired for next year because it's really difficult sometimes to get a judge, a good quality judge. And so, and the rest of them are all hired in January. So all of those people that we hire at like $12, $14 an hour that come and
Mhm.
judge our exhibits and kids' projects, that now will all run through this purchasing person also?
So for those contracts, who sets the rates?
The fair board sets the rates.
So the board decides if they get paid that much, and we do give them an agreement
Yeah.
about what they're going to do. So again, it could be a matter of, hey, we're looking for judges. We're going to have this fair coming up. Please let us know if you would like to be interested in those judges, but also work collaboratively with the purchasing person to assist with the outreach.
And slow our process down a little bit, but
Yep.
we'll, or whoever is going to do all that, because we start that process. I'd like to have all my judges hired in January, February, so.
Yep, so when you're ready to do that, feel free to reach out to facilities, and I'll connect them, give them the resources that they need to ensure that we're following the ordinance and then the policies that we have in place. So if anyone would ever come and challenge us, then we would have a documentation, an explanation as to why we chose who we did and how we welcome our vendors. This is not intended to cause any burden or delay. We'll work as quickly as we can. We just want to make sure that the county does not have gaps in liability. In event something were to happen, needs to identify who's responsible for what. Just few things on top of my head.
Right. So, and I guess I would add to that as you talk about that specific thing. So there's 21 exceptions to our policy. Okay. I was just counting. It's all the way through you. I think I got it right. And so, and one of those exceptions is that we would generally refer to it as a sole source exception, right? And that says where the service is of a technical or experimental nature, or where creative talent, scientific knowledge, professional skill, or special skills or training are required. That's an exception. And that is an exception that needs to be identified by the purchasing agent, documented, and saved along with that contract. So that's just a matter of saying, hey, we're trying to do this. Let's go put down on a piece of paper that says, these are the special skills. This is the rate that we're going to do. And we save that in that contract as essentially the backing. Should an auditor come in and say, how did you follow your policy? We identified this as a sole source hitting this exception of our policy. And that's how we met our policy requirement. So it doesn't really slow it down, but we have to kind of check all of those boxes as we go through it.
And I'll be more than happy to share for sole vendors, sole source, a document that we have put together with the feedback from our auditors and also the state auditors, because there's a lot in DHS that they'll have a sole source. So we can definitely repurpose that document as a checklist to then say, I purchased this because of that special condition. Have it, we'll file it with the contract. And the other one is for consistency is, let's say we have a contract, and who is this contract between? Is between company A and is it the county or the fair superintendent, or does it say county fair? Does it say Dunn County? So for consistency, this contract is a legal document. Who is it binding? Is it by an individual that represents, or is it the fair, or is it the county as a whole? So also there needs to be consistency with that.
So is there a way that the fair and a purchasing agent could sit down with all of the special needs and like, this is the process, this is what we need, this is, so that you have a checklist, or do you already have that?
I do have tons of checklists
Okay.
and I do have, and
But-
we have to follow state statutes
True.
very closely, and that could jeopardize our state aid if we don't follow those statutes. So it's going to be a matter of meshing together what the county policy is now. And I probably shouldn't even say this, but I go back to what like Gene Smith told me one time, that we were kind of a shroom group. And I'm like, I didn't understand what that all meant until he explained it to me. He said, we kind of treat you a little bit different. You're kind of in the closet, in the dark, like a mushroom. And then we all of a sudden find something that, oh, maybe we should be doing this. And so we let some light in and tell you what's going on. And that's, I kind of attribute that a little bit to this. and moving forward, because a lot of this stuff, I was not aware that it was this, that it applied to us as much, because that's what we were always told, is that we were able to do some of this on our
I would love to learn the statutes you need to follow, you've mentioned, to make sure how do we align with our policy, and just to make sure that we're not going astray or they're not contradicting.
So yeah, if we can make it easy for both parties so they know exactly. Like,
Absolutely. I'll be more than happy to schedule time with them, and we'll get this process going. And if you like, we can bring in monthly updates where we are at and what we did and our progress.
I'm guessing a band might be a sole source.
Yeah, well, that's just it. It really would be.
Yeah, so I don't think you'd need bids for that, but.
It's like another example too. What DHS does is DHS published a small advertising to said, we're ready to do our annual contract. Here's the services we provide. for children's services, behavior health, so on, so on. If you're interested in providing services with us, it had a contact number, who to contact, and email. And when they sit down through their annual procurement, I embedded that advertisement in the local paper in their sole source document.
Mhm.
So it just kind of became part of the file. And you can print as many as you want. It's kind of embedded copy of it.
Going back to the topic that Deb was talking about with, this person who wanted to be anonymous, they gave a check. What if someone were to want to make an anonymous donation, put cash in an envelope and a note saying, I want this money to go toward this?
Yes, and we will
How
make
would-
a- go ahead, I'm
How,
sorry.
I mean, is that a scenario that can fall somewhere within this policy?
So if an anonymous person shows up and says, here's money in the envelope, please use it for petting zoo
Mhm,
at the
yep.
fair.
Mm-hmm,
Once that's noted, we need to record that transaction in our system,
mm-hmm,
and it will be identified as for special purpose,
mm-hmm.
so that it's not used for anything else. And we do have those types.
Those kinds of things where they just come, like literally cash that
Cash.
cannot be traced
That's right.
Okay.
They can
to
come
a
and
specific person. Okay,
correct.
sorry.
We would need to make a record that this fund
It's just a
came,
matter of making that record
right,
to satisfy
that's
the
correct.
policy. Got it.
Otherwise, if I have no record, it didn't happen.
Yeah,
So if
that's
the
just-
neighbor
I-
came and challenged us, I said, well, what did you buy? My neighbor says they donated money, and I have no way of proving otherwise because I don't have anything.
sure. Got it.
Mhm. Any other questions before I go to the cash handling?
Does anyone have need clarification, or could we move right to the recommendations, or how we want to move forward so that the board just for,
I'm gonna listen to what she has to say.
okay, so you want to go through the rest?
Well,
Okay.
I'm learning stuff.
Okay,
believe it or not.
all right, well, then continue.
All right, so the next section is cash handling. So for cash specifically, I pointed out three sections right out of our ordinance. And that is how we deal with depositing public monies, who has the custody of these funds. And then there is the accounting and reconciliation. So public funds, meaning that any money that comes, including donations, employee or agent, should be deposited with the county treasurer. Okay. So also the county treasurer kind of becomes that custodian of the county's money. And the accounting and reconciliation, as finance comes in, and our responsibility is to maintaining those records that this money came and it is in our system. And then we reconcile. Does our bank match what's in our system? And that's done monthly. So then the other section is the cash receipting policy. So this policy was that derived right from the chapter 7 of those two sections that I've mentioned here. So the policy was first approved by the county manager, and that was in April. And then once that was approved by the county manager, then it went to the committee on administration, and that was adopted on April 24th. With the exception that there's going to be a review in 6 months and amend that because it came down, the intent of that was we require that cash be deposited within 24 hours. And in some cases where departments don't have a lot of cash flow, does it make sense for them to run with every dollar every quarter they have in 24 hours. Okay. And then, of course, I also reviewed the old Dunn County Fair policy. So this policy was put in place before before they became part of the Dunn County. So this is where it was, yet they were separate. And that policy was created and approved in 25 and 2005. And it was revised on the 18th of June in 2014, and then again in 2019. Okay, so I also looked at that policy. Yes.
We still ran our money through the county treasurer. We didn't, it was still deposited with the county, that statement. I didn't catch that before when I read through this. It says when the fair ran financial operations separately from the county treasurer.
Which section are you at?
C,
The
cash-
old county, so
Yes.
prior to that, this is
That-
where fair operated under its own fair board.
correct. We made our own policy because I had gone to the county and asked them if they had a cash handling policy that would apply to us, and they didn't, but we wanted to make sure we had dual control, that,
Sure.
you know, everything that's in our policy, you've read it, but we still deposited all of our money with the county treasurer. I just want to make that clear. That the money still was coming to the county. Okay?
So this is kind of, I broke it down into sections and bank accounts. Right, so we have a policy that says, you know, who is opening accounts, who should be assigned to those accounts. So of course, Section 1 says that all county banks must be solely established by our treasurer, but they can also have multiple people on there. It can be an elected official, never one person. Okay, so it would be treasurer, elected official, myself, or designee, somebody other than just that one person. Can be department head as well. The treasurer, or whom they designate, they're the ones that are maintaining all bank accounts. And every year when our auditor comes to do our audit, they specifically ask for a list of all the bank accounts. So for the last 2 years, since a little over 2 years I've been here, my staff and I, we keep a log or inventory of all our bank accounts. And those are the bank accounts we give to the auditor, which then auditor requests the bank statement, because there's a process that you need to go. But that bank that I've discovered is not on my roster. It's not in my inventory. So the auditors, if I didn't know, I didn't know it existed. Okay. So then, in addition, the county treasurer serves as that custodian of all the county money. And they have really that exclusive authority of maintaining those bank accounts. And again, our treasurer is not on this particular bank account. And nor am I. And I did follow up questions. And as of today, I don't know who these signee are on that account. And I don't know if there's a checking account with that. I don't know if there are checks. I don't know if there's a debit card or a credit card. I don't have any of that information. And unfortunately, I can't go to the bank and ask for that either because I am not on that account. So, and again, that's identified as a very high risk. I also note that speaking with the county fair superintendent, it was verbally confirmed that deposits are made, deposits of county fair funds is indeed received from Meat and Animal Project, which is known as MAP. And they are giving the county 1% of the proceeds of those auction sales. And then I did review the transactions with MAP, confirming here's the checks that were written, I was given copies of the checks that they've written to County Fair, and they had a back canceled check who it was endorsed to. Unfortunately, the back where it was endorsed was really not really readable. It was really pixelated and wasn't a really good copy. But so MAP has been issuing checks, but I have no record of those checks being deposited in the county system. They are, however, in this additional discovered bank. This bank account has deposits and it also has withdrawal activities. I did look through that, those statements. But again, I'm not able to request any copies of anything. I'm really dependent on what that statement says under like the ledger or memo. Who could that be? A lot of it says electronic deposit or phone app must be taking a picture of taking a check and depositing it. And then there are some withdrawals that again, it's very vague. It doesn't really tell me what it was used for. So if I can, so I also reviewed or try to track records of what was discovered with the treasurers, and they have no record of any of that information either. Now, MAP did contacted us asking us how to proceed with this payment. So I directed this individual to mail the check to us, which then will be received by the facilities. And then that person will then make a deposit and we would go getting that in a system right through the treasurer and into our Bremer Bank.
In regards to that, this account that is set up was approved by the county quite a few years ago because we could not carry over funds. And we wanted this money to be able to be used for projects at the rec park or however, like the gates. We bought gates and pens and fencing. And if we have to, it goes, I always get confused if it's a lapsing or non-lapsing because, we start out with zero and we end with zero or whatever, and we can't carry funds over. So the county approved this, having this account to use for that. At one point in time, the county did not, when we only had a savings account and the county did not want to issue all the premium checks from the SAP system. And so they authorized us or directed us to open a checking account, and then we received a check for whatever the amount of the premiums were, and then we issued the checks directly to the exhibitors out of that account. And that's how that account all was established. It was under county direction. So it's nothing that we were trying to hide. And I've provided copies of statements in previous years. I've had conversations with county auditors about this in, previous years, granted, not the last 3 or 4, but I have, provided information in the past.
Yeah, and as I said, I reviewed all the records and I did not find any evidence that this bank existed. I looked at all the accounts that were submitted to the auditors way back, as I kind of assumed that maybe this was opened when the fair was independent of the county. But again, not having that documentation, I can't really say agree or disagree.
Is that money that you received from MAP? It was supposed to be earmarked for going back to the kids basically to update things at the fair. So does
Yeah.
that just get thrown into a general fund, so to speak, or is it earmarked? That
Oh,
1%?
When that money gets receipted, it's put in the county fair account. So at the end, if there is any surplus, it goes into the general fund, just like any other money. Now, if there is a specific, we wouldn't need to identify that and then put it into as a special revenue. But typically, all the revenues that we received from the county fair, all of that go through our system, do not get assigned to its own fund. But we can definitely talk about, and Dan can speak to that too. We kind of entertain the idea of setting up a separate fund just for the fair, just like we have for transit, just like we have for other areas, to say this is for a specific purpose, and you'll be working in and out of that fund.
If I might,
Kelly.
Oh,
Oh, Kelly.
Yeah.
Where did you know he was there?
I got in a little bit late. I'm sorry. Yes. If I might, I would note that we are at this very moment in the process of setting up policies for fund balances for various accounts, for example, HHS, and whether they'll be lapsing or non-lapsing, and what an appropriate fund balance to carry is. So this is absolutely the perfect time to be having the discussion of whether the fair board should have a lapsing or non-lapsing and fund balance policy. Could not be better timing for having that particular discussion.
well, I was
Thank
gonna
you.
provide that policy in the executive packet tomorrow. So,
So I am Troy
Excellent.
Steinmeier. I am actually the president of the Meat Animal Committee. And so I guess I wanted, like, that 1% that MAP would give to the Dunn County Fair. It was all for a learning example for the kids, because they understand if they would sell an animal at market or whatever, that there's percentages taken out by the sale barn or whatever. But I think more importantly, what we did with that 1%, so I want to make sure we earmark this money. Because if you look at the big ass fans that are in the beef barn, those kids paid for that. Okay. You look at the concrete that's in that hoop barn that's been poured the last couple of years, those kids paid for that. Okay. So this is money that we, if you want to say, are taking from the kids for a learning experience, and trying to make them sit there and say when they get older that, hey, I helped do this, right? So I feel, and maybe I'm getting a little too passionate, but either we create a separate account, or there'll be 1% or 1% less taken out of those kids' checks.
Or it could be budgeted in the budget, and if it goes over, it will pick up from the general fund if there isn't money. So there is a way, there are options that we can definitely explore. Either set up the fair as its own fund, they'll work out of that fund, any money coming in, it will not roll to the general fund. So there's definitely options. But with this bank account, decision somewhat needs to be made, because there's money there. I believe there's approximately $40,000 that needs to be decided as to is that's going to be transferred to Bremer Bank or not. But the recommendation is that would be surrendered and we operate under our Bremer Bank.
And so I guess the only thing that I would ask, just, it doesn't need to be tonight, but this is money that came from the kids, right? From their projects. And so that's where I want to make sure that we can use that money to do an upgrade at the fair and stuff that, that way. I don't want it just to disappear on,
Right.
on these kids. So,
Right.
thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you for the feedback. So and again, the recommendation is here is to make sure that all the funds and the banks are accounted for, and the appropriate people have access to that, and those can be reconciled. If we don't have it, if it doesn't go through our system, we don't know that it exists. But again, later decisions can be made if that money that's sitting in that bank account will just go, whatever that balance is, into its established fund, and we'll go from there. But decisions to be made, and there's definitely options. So that was in the area of the bank. Any questions there?
I would just add it, and as Supervisor McCullough had pointed out, there's always the ability to change that. But the current standing resolution of the county board was to have the county fair be a lapsing account which is the term that means the money comes back to the general fund at the end, and then the county covers any losses at the end of the year, right? So that's kind of the balance between that, right? Is you're either lapsing or non-lapsing. In one place you could run a deficit, and the other one you can run a deficit, but you also can run a surplus, as opposed to always ending at zero at the end of the year. So certainly things to be discussed as it relates to that, but the current resolution, and by current, it was in 1995,
As
that
it stands
the board
today.
resolved to create it as a lapsing fund.
So the next one is daily logs and documentation. So the policy requires that all payments, and that county fares no exceptions, that all the payments are documented. It calls it logging daily using an approved receipting system. And receipting system defines as could be a register or some other source, or it could be printed carbon copy type of a receipting system. So that it can be in a chronological order, or anything that you can identify and match. Here's what I received, and here's a receipt to substantiate, to solidify that transaction. Accessible systems, and again, that can also be computer, Excel, however system that might be. So then that also tracking was not followed and also identified as a risk. So we had payments from vendors that were submitted directly to the county fair. So, and those were not always logged. Based on when I did this, I've seen no logs or was provided at that time. And it's really unknown if they were given a receipt. I observed there was a register, but that's the extent of it. I don't know if that register, when transaction happened, the receipts were issued. So if we have a individual that paid and they want to dispute, it says, well, I paid you this. Well, no, it's actually different. Then lack of these records, it's difficult to then be able to dispute any differences that we might have without having that type of a receipt. So the other one was, there was no, I didn't observe like a reconciliation between the register and what actually made it to the bank deposit, or the log to what cash was taken to the bank. It was, what I've observed, it was just removed from the register. If all I know, it was 1,000, but I have no way of knowing, did the register have 1,500? I didn't have a second source to verify what was on that receipt. So this is where the register or any receipting systems become handy to then be that second source to verify.
Yeah.
Also at the fair gates, now my understanding is that cash was collected through ticket sales, and I have that on a different, explained in a different section. Yep.
Okay, so since this came out, did you get the envelope that I went to the fair office, printed out a duplicate ledger from the cash
Yeah,
register?
I got an envelope of all the receipts,
Yes,
and I appreciate that.
yep,
And best practice is to reconcile it right there that day, have all the receipts, so that, another person signs it and then it's initialed.
yes.
I got receipts, but I wasn't able to go back and track them to all the deposits that were made that will require another in-depth audit review.
Yep, and so we balance the cash register every day. Well, first of all, people that pay get the receipt because it automatically prints the receipt for them. And you hand it to them. Sometimes they hand it back to you and tell you to throw it. I can't
Sure.
control that.
Sure.
But they all get receipts, and we reconcile that cash register every day. The next morning, at night, the drawer is put in the safe, and then the two treasurer, they count all that money. I print out the printout, and then I double check that we still have balance. We were over $3 this year. I don't know if somebody gave the wrong change or something didn't get put in the cash register, but we were over $3. And then, so I think we've been doing that, reconciling to make sure that happened. And we do have the dual control because there's two of us in the office usually, and then we have the two treasurers that actually verified the money.
Yep.
That it matched my report.
Yep. So the adding piece is documenting those events.
And I have an Excel spreadsheet that lists the daily.
So best practice is two individuals. One operates the cash register. Cash registers have control with the key. One will print what they call a T ledger, and only certain people should have access to it. Usually it's a manager or supervisor that will have that key to actually print everything that happened in that register. So you have a register users, and that register user would not typically be the one that would run those, what they call T ledger. So once a T ledger is printed, that then gets reconciled with the bank statement, and there should be an initial or sign off of some sort to say, yes, this was verified. Cash registers usually will have a built-in key or a password, and it will print a T-sheet, usually with that individual name. So knowing that, yes, somebody other than the operator of that register was able to pull that out and count the money that's in the register. Did it match the receipt? And that was attached, and it matches the deposit. Now, when it goes to the bank, we will reconcile. It says, yep, $100 was in here, verified by another person, and it's $100 in the bank. So all these two kind of line up all together. So the next section, I'm going to take you to deposit timeliness. I think our policy says that all money received should be deposited as soon as possible and within the 24 hours. And that also includes the county fair. And this is the year that my staff, including myself, assigned as the custodian to assist with the timeliness of deposit. We understand that things get really busy to make sure that there was a separation of duties and another person counting and verifying. That was the rule as to why I was there. In some instances, I was able to. Some of them, I wasn't given that opportunity to verify. So I took them to the bank and I left with what I could. So one day I went with one of the supervisors. That day was the only day I was able to count to verify as a second person. But again, I'm counting money that was given, but I have no idea, did we sell X amount of tickets? And does that align with what I'm depositing in cash? So I asked for those logs. So the logs will tell me out of gate, this individual was given a starting ticket number and an ending ticket number. Then they go do their sales. They come back and should be counted to say you sold X tickets and you've returned X tickets. Those are the logs, and I was able to receive that first day, but I was not successful, nor my colleague, to collect the following all the way till Sunday. So prior to that, we kind of struggled with making sure that those deposits are made timely. And the reality was that a lot of them were deposited really, really late. Some of them were 2 months. So we understand 24 hours might not always be ideal, but we want to make sure that that money is deposited as soon as possible. Okay. So if the cash gets picked up, let's say the bank is closed, we have protocols on how we deposit that money. We've talked with our bank. They give us bags that are locked and secure, and we have a key to a drop box. So let's say that something happens and the bridge was broken and we couldn't get to the bank. We have alternative areas to secure and lock the money and deposit them as soon as we possibly can, the following business day. So facilities also has a ILOC. So if anybody from facility goes, then they will lock the money in to make sure that it's not accessible for anyone. So recommendation here is to make sure that the county fair superintendent make sure that complete and accurate account of information is provided. A lot of the delays would be waiting for where should this money be deposited, what we call cost center or accounts. Is it for fairgrounds or is it for admin? Or we need to know a little bit more to know what account needs to be put. So there'll be some delay as we're waiting for those. The other recommendation is, again, we want to put money in the bank as soon as possible. The longer they are laying around, the greater chances of them getting misplaced or, fraud can happen, anything. So we want to make sure that those are secured. Also, train cash custodians on how to do dual controls. So we'll work with Deb and her team on how to make sure that that's followed. We'll do more one-on-one training just to make sure. So then the next one is storage. Now the storage policy then requires that all money be locked in a secure location, such as safe, either that's built-in safe or bounded to a wall or in a locked office. So that was followed. I observed that the cash was indeed in a locked safe. Not only was the safe locked with the password, it was in a locked room with only limited people with the key. So when I was there, I observed that the safe wasn't locked. Doors were ajar, but the door was locked. No one can actually get into that room. I have somewhat of a risk there simply because it is two relatives that only have the key. So typically you want to separate them, make sure that one person has not relatives necessary that have access and they can share the key. Another one is segregation of duties. So, and again, we always want to have another person to multiple people complete a transaction. So we don't have the same person from point A all the way to point Z, if that's paying or receiving. There's always need to be a separation of duties. And we'll work with the fair to accommodate that as we can bring in Mercedes from facilities to assist when needed, and including us in finance. So then again, off-campus custodian. This is again who's going to be assigned to on behalf of the Dunn County. And that custodian kind of oversees that cash handling, including make sure that they are safe, that things are being recorded and reconciled. So I was the custodian for this season in summer, and I did all I could to safeguard, and with the limited resources and documentation, do the recording and the reconciliation. So the other one is matching receipts to the deposits. So we agreed that all receipt payments, they all should match another source. So if you have X dollars, it needs to match another record. And that record is where it will live with the treasurer's office or in the system. So here is receipts were not consistently included with deposits. So this again kind of caused that delay because we were asking or timing when they were available. So myself and the assistant finance director, we also requested supporting records But the fair treasurer staff provided them only once when I was there on that Friday. And they were not available those subsequent, when we asked for those requests. Subsequent requests were not met. So while deposit slip matched the bank receipt, so they did, the deposits matched what was in the bank. And I was able to confirm that with the treasurers, but we have no way of knowing whether that was really the sale. So if I took 10,000 to the bank, I got a deposit, says, well, that's 10,000. But was the sale of tickets 15,000? Was it 16,000 or was it 9,000? I have no way of verifying that. So that piece was missing and was not able to do that full reconciliation. And again, best practice is to make sure that there's all that supporting documents that kind of follow the trail of the money from the time that it was received, balance full circle to the time that it gets to the bank. So then I also reviewed the ticketing and raffles. So in the cash policy, it outlines that pre-numbered tickets, because we're kind of using those pre-numbered tickets, they're on a roll, be logged and reconciled. So I did get that log that that first day that I was there. But there was no raffle tickets. I believe that didn't happen this year. I don't have any, there was no raffles. So again, I observed that there were pre-numbered tickets, and those were stored right in that room where the safe is. And those were only accessible by the two fair treasurers, who were again immediate family, but they were there. But there was a lack of documentation on how these tickets were managed and dispersed and counted and so on. More on the honor system, if anything. So then I also observed that the fair treasurers collected cash from the grandstand and at each gate. So they would physically, two of them would make a trip. But as they were going to collect that money, there was no log available to verify with the person that actually handed over the money that we are in sync. It was done after the fact. And I have no way of verifying that those individuals at the gates agreed with what was given by either providing a signature or anything in that nature. And that was not, I was not able to find that. So I'm going to assume that didn't happen. So the trips were made, money was collected, but again, there needs to be the person that hand over the money at the gate. Did they give him 100? Did 100 made it to the building? So recommendations here. So then we want to be able to make sure that as that money gets picked up from because it's cash basis, it's all cash, to make sure that that's tight controls in there. And they must kind of validate what they're giving is really what you have, what was picked up. And then the transport. So this one is the policy says that the money needs to be transported using a secure method. So that can be a bank issued locked bag, or can be a law enforcement escort, or could be another personnel. So that did happen the time that we were transporting money to the bank. So all the funds were placed in a locked bag that was provided by the bank, and two individuals that were not related transported the money to the bank. So that kind of concludes those areas that I've observed and documented. I also included some priority recommendations to take place So I addressed like the bank accounts compliance we ultimately, decision is to be made about this unauthorized bank deposit, this bank that exists, and then stop using that bank. Transfer any existing money, the balances, to an unauthorized bank account. We need to then notify MAP to immediately letting them know what the process is to sending checks. They can provide them resources or format on how to. Treasurers, we also accept a wire. They can wire that money versus sending a check. And also reinforce the policy requirements. And also establish more of a periodic monitoring and reconciling methods. So this is kind of like immediate recommendation. And I think we've talked about some start on procuring, building out templates or checklist on how we're going to make that happen. And same with the cash. It's kind of revisit that policy and retrain those individuals, perhaps schedule additional training with the assigned fair treasurers, and also spend some time with the individuals that are collecting money. But then again, before that happens, we would establish those logs, those checks and balances so that they are aware what to expect.
Excuse me, Beata, is there a way that the current bank account that's out there that can it just be brought into the county and stay separate or not?
It is constitutionally up to the treasurer. But
Okay.
technically, yes.
Okay, so it could stay its own account.
Yeah, we have, we have other accounts as well that are not Bremer Bank. But on all of them, the treasurer's office need to be on that account. So the decision is, options are there to have this account there. Then we just need to make sure that the treasurer's office is part of that account and that we have access to the statements. And when auditors ask, then we'll provide them the roster or inventory of all our banks.
Yeah, so with the money from MAP, so would it be okay to say that once we figure out how we can keep that money separate for the kids at the fair, that we would transfer the money at that time?
Yeah, there's a lot of process behind these recommendations, so I think it's, yeah, I mean, we can manage how we go about that, and the fund balance policy, I was just looking at it, the fund balance policy will cover the fair as it's written, so, and it would be a non-lapsing.
So then I could tell the MAP treasurer that she can hold on to that money or keep that money there until the county and I talk to her. Is that fair?
So the contact I've had, and this is through Mercedes. Mercedes was the one that had the direct contact, and asked me that question. What should they do with the check? So I told her to mail that check to the facilities, and that was a while ago. So maybe she already has it. Do you know, Austin, if she did? I didn't look in the system if it was receipted. But we can definitely track down. But the last instructions I provided for Mercedes to communicate to MAP was to send the check to facilities address.
Okay, so we can check in what we paid or was sent in this year and then plus the money that's in the account now after we figure out how we're gonna ear tag it or whatever. Then we'll send it over to you.
Yeah.
Figure.
Well, and if I
Oh.
might, also, if that check is already in process, we will absolutely keep track of that number and make sure that it is associated with whatever discussion we have about how we're going to deal with the MAP money. We want to make sure that you are confident in what is going on.
And the only reason I guess I'm so passionate, you know, these are the kids for Dunn County, right? They're our next future. And for them to have pride in what's going on and that it's not for me, right? It's for all these kids doing the projects that I want them to be able to continue. So that's maybe if you want to say I'm a little bullheaded, I'm standing up for the kids of Dunn County. So
Yep.
thank you.
No, absolutely. I very much appreciate your passion and your dogged determination to make sure we do right by the kids.
Thank you.
I can do a thorough review of that bank account if I'm granted the access to look at those transactions. There are transactions that are 3,000, 1,500, and I don't know if that's a donation or if that is from MAP. From MAP, I could identify those, but there are other transactions in there as well that are not necessarily, could not be MAPs.
Do you have the contact person and phone number of the MAP treasurer?
Yes, I do, and so does facilities.
Okay, perfect. I know she'd be very open book to let you look at anything you wanted to look at, so.
She
okay,
provided us the information we asked for
okay,
very
perfect,
promptly.
thank you.
And Beata, I can sit down with you too, since I provided all the statements to you and explain those. Those were building project donations for the ice arena. A couple of those that you're talking about.
Yep. And again, we need to do another review because as I was at a glance reviewing, I also realized there were some payments made to an individual that we also made a payment. I just needed to verify that, you know, what's that all about?
So the next steps are to work together to
Mhm.
implement the recommendations that you have here, and so that it's not a burden on any, hopefully not burdensome. But yes, is the fair board?
Yep.
Derek, will you want to tell them who we voted in as their treasurer?
Later, it's later.
Oh, it's later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'll be more than happy to again report the progress to you on a monthly basis. Our timeline and thing that we put together as an action plan.
Great,
Right.
thank you.
And the last part on this report is just some fun ideas. I couldn't resist. Right? So kind of like explore technology. So technology is available on how we can handle cash more smoothly. Take advantage, if anything, explore those options. The other one is tickets, either color price. I love fairs, so I've been around a couple of them. And Minnesota Fair is no cash. It's all swipe, swipe, swipe. And you would think that people would not spend. If you don't see the money coming out of my pocket, I'll be swiping and probably spend more. And then I went to a couple fairs, and I think that one was in Minnesota as well, but it was like a all-inclusive ticket. So what it included is the rides and entry and all the exhibits. So that was kind of fun. So I just kind of threw some in here to kind of plant the seed if you're interested in exploring more. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? You're very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you put together the financials as well? Yeah, or Austin?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, we all met with Deb 2 Fridays ago and went through everything to make sure her numbers matched ours, and we were just missing a few checks on her side. She was missing a few bills on our side, and it's projecting with pretty much everything in it about negative 34. If you have any more questions on that, we can answer them.
Anyone have any questions? Oh, Deb?
Austin, have you gotten any additional of those missing, like the Excel he paid by credit card? That one was missing for the sponsors. I see that's not been updated yet, so I know he told me he paid by credit card.
Yeah, this is from the 18th, so.
Yeah, the year to date, the year-to-date is what's in the system. The total 2025 projected is showing that we're still waiting on that Fish and Game check. We also just got the bill from the Hockey Association about $4,600. That isn't in here, so.
Okay. I'll follow up again to make sure, and maybe he can send me his receipt from Excel, because that should have hit the books by now. A credit card payment should have. So,
Yep, and I believe Mercedes accounted them in the projection.
yes, well, yeah, well, here it is, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that they were received.
All right. Thank you very much. So we're gonna move on to 6B, which is the Facilities and Parks Division report.
Okay. I'll try to keep moving through this, but we did a lot because it's been about a month and a half since we met, so we have about 2 months of stuff in it, but I'll go quick. We already touched on the Fair Board, just on the facility side, operations, projects, fleet, monthly financials. Facilities and parks, operations. One of the things that was brought up in that county board workshop was just our summer help and our fleet. So just wanted to show you some of the same stuff that you might see in another upcoming meeting and talk about it. And we have 2 LT staff that are around 32 hours a week for the summer only, 0.3 FTE equivalent. They mow our parks, and then when they get done with those, they mow our government center, neighbors, everything pretty much except judicial. They mow the highway department. They took transit over, and lower wage costs, no benefits burden, and they let our maintenance workers and techs focus on maintenance projects, repairs, that sort of thing. So what kind of cost is involved? And the LT rate is 18 an hour, and our facilities with their benefits is on average 35.53 an hour, so about half. So almost a 2-for-1 equation. Yes, it is extra staff, but we would not be able to keep up to maintaining what we do without them, especially with how we're trying to catch up on a lot of maintenance things. So where it calculates out to do the same hours, it's 21,844 on an annual savings to do the same work. My recommendation is to maintain that LTE program, if not add another one, if I had a wish list. They do a great job, and some of those new nice cab mowers haven't even been used by us yet because those the 2 summer help almost take care of everything every week this whole summer. And then, I think a goal of the county in general is to find a reduction in cost, not on the manpower side of things and on anything else that we could think outside the box of. And one of the things that got brought up was fleet. We have 12 or so cars and vans that DHS uses, every department at the county uses at our main facility here. And then we have 7 fleet pickups. And it's very hard to get the data because people book the cars out through Microsoft Outlook, through an email address, and it's just booked out like an office or a conference room calendar. So it'll pull all that data for these 13 cars, 12 cars per day for the past year. and see how close to 100% utilization are we getting on these cars. And maybe we could go down one car, and the 2 times a year that we're at 100% utilization, we pay somebody the 70 cents a mile and not pay the $500, $400 a month car payment. So thinking about it that way. Or maybe they use one of the facilities trucks that day, something like that. But safely removing one of the cars if it isn't a negative, in a net negative equity position, that would be yet to be determined by our leasing company. On the car side, on the truck side, I know we have equity in them, and I know with what we have for snow removal equipment for other pickups, we could safely remove a truck and a car with an estimated annual cost savings of $12,311, not including the insurance on those 2 vehicles, not including the fuel that's allocated and maintenance towards them, but just in the lease cost. And then what we have impact allocated on our budget for leases is 57,000 on the cars and 45,000 on the trucks. And what we're actually on the calculating 12 months for those leases comes in a little less. So that's over budgeted by 10,500. So if you put those together, it's around 23,000 in savings without having much of an impact.
I have a question because I know there was a discussion with Health and Human Services, and an additional vehicle was added because they were having times when they couldn't get a vehicle and they didn't want to use their own vehicles for picking up clients and things like that. So after they added that vehicle, they didn't have issues. So I don't know if that changed.
Yep, we added 2, and there is some regulation with DHS where they have first dibs at some of the fleet. But there's also a fleet vehicle that could easily be driven that gets 1,500 miles a year that is paid off and is ours. That doesn't get used, that could. 11 passenger van that might not be as sporty as a new Malibu, but in a pinch, if DHS gets first dibs at those, the few times a year that somebody else has to get paid mileage, it calculates out hundreds of miles that becomes that equalizing point. Dan, did you have something to that?
I mean, it's simple. I mean, obviously, everything that we do as we talk about these things have impacts. But, so it is, I think as you talk about that availability of a car becomes that question, right? Where you're going to, if you have 100% utilization, you likely have people who wanted a car and couldn't get one. But I think the other side of that is looking at policies. So Austin talks a little bit about priority. I mean, I don't, but prior to me being in this role, if I wanted to take a fleet vehicle and I was going to go to a conference, it sits in a parking garage for 5 days while nobody can use it. Right. So what is that kind of policy around trips like that and personal use of vehicles and things like that, where we can optimize the use of our facilities or our fleet vehicles in those cases?
A real good point was brought up from someone who said, through a year and a half, everything was remote and the cars just sat. So can something be scheduled where all those visits came on the same day? Could some be a virtual visit? I mean, the question needs to be asked instead of just adding another car. Can we be more efficient on how we schedule things when $100,000 for 10 vehicles is in the equation? So.
Question, in the case of like the DHS scenario, I would assume that there are going to be certain instances, if they're transporting clients, they have to do it in a county van because of liability.
Not have to, but want to. It becomes
Okay.
personal liability is the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I mean, if this was somebody who was acting out and they were in their personal vehicle versus a county vehicle.
Yep.
It's gonna be safer in a county
Yeah.
vehicle, I would assume.
But I would tell you, but certainly not a requirement, and there are counties out there that don't have fleet.
Mm-hmm,
So I mean, it can be
Right.
done,
yeah.
but there's risks associated. So
But yeah.
everything
And
has.
in that case, there's gonna be an additional insurance cost.
Right.
Yep, so some things to think about, when you're going through, all these different 150 subjects in some of your meetings, but I'm a big advocate for having that extra summer help if we need to get, I mean, that's two people that it's their income, while they're not teaching. And if somebody needs to use my pickup during the day while I'm at the office and I can't go visit a park that day or something, that's not much of a sacrifice versus having the extra help. Talking to Brady today, it's already hard enough to try to get caught back up, and the guys haven't even had to mow this year. So, okay, clean sweep. This is an event that Dunn County hasn't done since 2019. The city's doing it because they didn't know if we were gonna get our paperwork done. Our paperwork was done. This is this spring that all of this happened. So there's two of them. So if city people that live in the city or these two townships can't make it to the one, the countywide one of ours is on Friday morning at the rec park from 8 to noon, $10 a car. Household waste and egg waste and everything on the green list you can, everything on the red list you can't. And this is something that was not budgeted for in the 2025 budget, but was approved by this committee. So there is a grant involved to cover some of this, but I looked back at how much it costed in 2019. It was about $45,000. So just a heads up that this might not all be covered by the grant. But yep, we'll see how Friday goes.
Point out that the contingency fund hasn't been used much this year.
Projects. So this is something we rolled out right after our meeting last month, the last Tuesday of every month. The goal was to get to one of these 12 to 15 parks that we have buildings and facilities at, and power them up, renovate them, do what we could without going over the top. And the first two parks, because they were a mile away from each other, were Champney Park and the Russian Slough. That was in August, and then Pine View was yesterday. The one on the left, that's the pavilion that you probably didn't know existed because it was in a shaded area. It was overgrown. I mean, the lake's right there, and it's pretty blown out in the picture. But Champney Park is right up on the north side of Tainer Lake, where the mouth of the river flows in. Used to be a boat landing there, but it's still there, but you can't even launch a kayak. I feel pretty bad for all the waterfront owners there, that it's not even waterfront anymore. But right where this pavilion it is, and then it really silts up after that. But then this pavilion and playground set is on the inside of kind of the island, and then the homes surround it. And that was on August 24th, I believe. 15 picnic tables, 2 pavilions, a play set. And then the play set on the left here, this is a whole team effort. All of our custodians Made it optional for them, but anybody that wanted to come could. That way, some of these custodians and facilities techs and workers that are all around our buildings, some of them didn't know these parks even existed. So, and then the Russian Slough, which is a pretty priceless area right up on the Red Cedar River. And this top picture was even right after Greg mowed in here, but you couldn't see through any of this. But that was putting us in about 16 yards of black dirt, and then we'll finish this off in the spring. But either putting some better grass in there or gravel so more people can park there. That's a big thing, is a lack of parking. And then there's 3 picnic tables there, concrete picnic tables that were in the weeds. You couldn't see them, and broken tabletops and everything else. So those are all fixed, and it's beautiful there. And then Pineview Park, this was yesterday, that this is one of the pavilions. This is next to the water, and it's about 4 feet more of blacktop under there that you don't know exists. And then this is the other main pavilion. Both of these pavilions at Pineview Park have power. It's one of the few parks that have power. And then they have 4 grills, but they weren't really usable. So, go ahead.
Where's Pine View Park?
Down on Lake Ogalla, it's very pretty
Oh,
area. It's one of the most used parks of Dunn County.
Oh, cool.
28 stumps ground down. We reseeded it. We saved, to grind 28 stumps, you gotta be smart about how you spend the money. So we had our staff take care of the wood chips and stuff by just letting them disintegrate through the fall and winter, and then we spread that out, packed it down, and seeded it around that. And then anything that we need to overseed, we'll bring a little bit of black dirt over that in the spring. 2 pavilions painted. It has brick changing rooms there, and 30 wood bollards replaced, 3 park grills replaced, and then we brushed a lot on the parking lot by the beach. The graffiti on side is all dark and maroon. I've got audio on this, but I didn't want it echoing through. About 12 of us there yesterday. It was nicer the day that I took all the before pictures, and it was pretty misty and crappy out, but dry enough to at least get some stuff done. The goal of all of these park power-ups is, to do what we can without, these aren't, if we did a big project, it's not budgeted for, but if we can keep it a half hour or a half day, 3/4 of a day, a month, it's doable when we actually catch back up. And I didn't want to do a bunch of before and after pictures, so I'm not happy yet with how that one's not done. It needs a bit more, but. And then the monthly financial reports, the one main Excel PDF style that you normally see wasn't updated yet. So I just did a snippet of through September, the only things left to really hit are 2 payroll cycles. But with that, about almost 9% to the good, subtract a couple payroll cycles out of there for our main buckets between the buildings. And then the parks, a lot of this consumed budget for this year was about $8,000 of that Caddy Woodlawn brushing that they did earlier in the summer. We still have about 8,400 left in that budget before we charge some of this time. Yesterday to that. So mowing is wrapping up for that summer help. There's only one left of the summer help. But there's still a little bit of money in each of these buckets for that. But looking pretty good on that. That's what I had. Any questions on that?
Does anyone have questions? So Caddy Woodlawn, so did you figure out what to do with the windows and? or-
They're at least boarded up right now. We were gonna go to plexiglass. It still has to be glued in the same way, but yeah, and I have cameras for that park ready to go. Just the next time they were gonna go down there, I'd send that with them. So, yep.
Well, the parks look amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
It's like fun.
Yeah, yeah, and then yeah, I grill out for the team at them and it's a good time. Oh, yeah, I mean, this is something where unless, other than running stuff like chainsaws and stuff, I don't think there's much for liabilities in other organizations or departments coming and helping out at some of these and, helping out with a roller, paint roller, stuff like that. So,
Put a call out.
Yeah.
yeah,
Alright.
we'll take any help we can get.
Right. All right, thank you. So we can move on to consideration of action to be taken by the committee, discussion and approval of the Dunn County Fair Board bylaws. Did everyone get a chance
Mhm.
to look at those? Are there any clarifying questions? So then I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the bylaws.
To approve, okay, that was Larry Bjork and Randy Prochnow seconds. So then is there any discussion? Because these were approved at the last Fair Board meeting. Okay. Oh,
About Michelle's suggestion.
There would be probably one thing that was discussed that I don't think made it in, is if the fair board would have a junior, younger person. Right? That was in there. Okay, well, anyway. To me, it's a real plus. Years ago, when I was on the Menominee School Board, we actually had a student that was a non-voting member of the board, and they open eyes because they see different things. And so where we are on that, I'm not sure, but I just want to put a plug in that I think that it's something we should consider.
Yeah, the only reason that we had to take Scott's daughter out of it is because you can't have two family members on the board. Is that,
That's correct.
okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay,
So-
even as a non-voting member.
Yeah, I think the verbiage with the one vote per household became really messy in there when we ran that to ask Andrew about all of that.
Oh.
But other than that, there was nothing on a young person joining it or anything like that.
It's something that actually we talked about over lunch yesterday at the conference. You weren't at our table, but Michelle Bashand.
Yeah.
And, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember who all, Agnes.
I wasn't there.
Well, It was, and Michelle actually emailed me, I guess, last night, with that suggestion and had some sort of background information. Who should I, forward that, email to?
With, bylaw regulations and
Yeah,
stuff.
she was talking about, adding a junior member and some suggestions of how that might be done.
And we can always amend these too.
Right, I understand that, but, yeah, I can send you that. Should I send it to you, Asta?
Yeah, and then I'll
Okay.
get Andrew and all the other parties involved that we need to just
Yeah,
cross our Ts and dot our Is.
right.
Because the fair board would then amend them,
Yep.
then they would
Right.
come back again?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, but that's
Yeah.
not that
So-
big a
Yeah,
deal.
so that's something.
One thing that I think you'll want to add, sorry, as I just zoomed through this quick, because I didn't do my homework. Not that I'm on your committee at all, but the ex officio member would actually be a voting member, so you would want to call that out if you don't want them to be a voting member. You did want that to be a voting member?
We said that we didn't want that to be a voting member.
Yeah. So, yeah, so ex officio means essentially because of their office or because of their role, as opposed to an individual. But ex officio members typically have voting rights unless specified otherwise.
Yeah, because if they're not a Dunn County employee, then they would be a voting member.
That's the comment.
Right, yeah. So under
Oh, yeah, okay, I see.
Article 4, under the treasurer, that's,
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
is that,
Your Article 3, number 1, it talks about 2 weeks.
so any other discussion? So yeah,
I believe they had lunch without.
there weren't any more spaces at the table.
Yeah, I figured that
I'm
out.
sorry.
any other discussion? All right, well, second time? All right, so, then there's a motion to approve the bylaws of the Dunn County Fair Board. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so it's unanimous. All right, so then, 7B is recommendation for Dunn County employee to be a non-voting member with the role of Fair Board Treasurer at 150 annual charged hours. Any clarifying questions? Would anyone like to make a
So moved.
motion? So Supervisor Lyon? Second? All right, Supervisor Brock now. All right, any discussion?
Yes.
All right.
Only question I had, I saw this today for the first time. And the thing that popped out to me is, are there gonna be certain times when we want to use that 150 hours and certain times when we don't? Or are you expecting 8-hour days? Because they're not 8-hour days at the fair. How are you gonna is there a recommendation on how those 150 hours should be spent?
I think what we just totaled up is estimated in the off season, estimated in June, July, and the ramp up, and then the week of, and then the ramp down equated to about that. It's hard to say perfectly, especially this first year when if we're going to a card system and changing in how we do things. It might take a little bit more legwork the first year, but is an estimation of on an annual basis.
Would the Fair Board be responsible for benefits? I think when the sheriff guys are there.
It's just 150 annual charge hours
Okay,
of the um, total hourly rate of that individual.
okay. Thank you.
And this was approved also, right? Okay, so at the fair
Yep.
board. Mhm. Okay. Can we name the person since we know? Right, okay. All right, so any other discussion? All right, so all in favor of approving Dunn County employee to a non-voting member with the role of fair board treasurer at 150 annual charge hours? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that passes unanimously. All right, I don't know. I don't think Wade from Murals in Menominee is here to discuss. So there was a question of whether the county had a building or for the murals in Menominee that's happening next. You know that date. So it's an event where like over, I think 5 days, they come from all around the world and they paint murals. And so I don't, since we don't have Wade here to discuss, because I think there's actually a fee, he said, involved with having a mural. So we will table that until we can maybe get him the next meeting. All right, so 8 is none. I think our next meeting date is actually October 22nd is the fourth Wednesday at 5. Right, okay. So then we will adjourn at 7:07. All right, thank you.